All right, everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Yeah.
This is actually our 7th one. And this time, we're going to be talking about something pretty revolutionary, I think,
Mm.
in the health and fitness world.
Yeah.
This whole thing started with an article I found on zenfitpulse.com. You know that website?
Oh, yeah. ZenFit Pulse.
They've got a ton of really in-depth articles on all sorts of health and fitness stuff. It's not just like, the surface level stuff. They really kind of
They go deep.
they go deep. Exactly. That's why we love them.
Yeah.
So this article in particular caught my eye because it's all about this groundbreaking study that was published in the Lancet. That's the big leagues when it comes to medical journals, right?
Huge.
So ZenFit Pulse was actually, I think, the first to really take this complex study and break it down into something that, regular people can understand and actually use.
Yeah, it's great because Lancet articles, they're dense, they're long. I mean, for people in the field, it's great, but they do a great job kind of summarizing and pulling out the key points.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So basically, and this is the really mind-blowing part, this study is totally challenging what we thought we knew about weight and health.
Interesting.
It's literally questioning whether BMI is actually a good way to measure, your health. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is BMI.
The big question.
Yeah, the big question, is it really the best way to gauge your health?
For years, it has been the go-to, right? Everyone uses BMI because it's so simple. You just, quick calculation, your height and weight.
Yeah, you step on that scale, you're like, oh, no, or okay, shoo.
Exactly. And then they categorize you underweight, normal, overweight, obese. It's easy.
Yeah, we've all been there. But this Lancet study is saying, hold on a second, maybe we need to rethink this whole obesity thing. What if BMI isn't the be-all and end-all?
They're suggesting a real paradigm shift in how we define and think about obesity.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are they proposing instead? What's this new way of thinking about it?
Well, one of the key concepts they introduced is this distinction between clinical obesity and preclinical obesity.
Okay.
So clinical obesity, they're saying, is when that excess fat you have, it's actually impacting your health, maybe even shortening your lifespan. But preclinical obesity, that means, okay, you might have high levels of body fat, but it's not really causing any noticeable problems in how you function day to day.
So it's not just about how much you weigh,
Right.
but it's about whether that weight, that fat, is actually messing with your health, right?
Exactly. It's about the functional impact. So they're saying, hey, healthcare providers, you need to look beyond just this number.
Okay.
It's about the individual's overall health and well-being.
That's a pretty big shift, right?
Yeah, big time.
To have one of the top medical journals in the world basically saying, we need to rethink this whole obesity thing. That's pretty major.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge to a long-held belief, really causing a lot of discussion and debate in the medical world.
So let's get into the specifics here. Why is BMI suddenly on trial?
Okay, yeah.
What are its flaws?
Well, we talked about how it's so simple.
Yeah.
And that's kind of its downfall, too. It just doesn't capture the whole picture. It can be really misleading.
Okay, so let's break down these fatal flaws, right?
Yeah.
What's the first major issue with relying solely on BMI?
So for one, it doesn't distinguish between different types of body mass. It just lumps it all together, fat, muscle, bone, all the same to BMI.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. A super muscular athlete
Exactly.
could have a really high BMI and be labeled as
Overweight
or even obese,
right,
but have very little body fat.
Exactly. And on the other hand, you could have someone with very little muscle,
Right.
but a lot of fat, and they could be considered normal BMI.
Right.
So it's really not telling you the whole story.
So it's like judging a book by its cover. Right.
Totally.
You can't see what's actually going on inside.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. BMI completely ignores fat distribution.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of this.
Yeah.
There's good fat and bad fat.
Exactly.
Right.
So visceral fat, that's the fat that's stored around your organs. That's the dangerous kind.
Yeah.
It's linked to heart disease, diabetes, all those scary conditions.
Right.
And then you've got subcutaneous fat. That's the fat that's just under your skin. It's much less concerning.
Okay.
And BMI doesn't care. It treats them both the same.
Wow. So you could have two people with the exact same BMI.
Exactly.
But one is storing a ton of this harmful visceral fat.
Right.
And the other one's just got the less harmful subcutaneous fat, and BMI wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Exactly. It just doesn't give you that level of detail about what's actually going on in your body.
Wow. Okay, so we've got the lumping it all together problem, and then
Wow.
we've got this location issue.
Right.
What's flaw number 3?
So the third big one is that BMI uses this one-size-fits-all approach. And, in the real world, that just doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't consider things like age, sex, and ethnicity.
Right, which can totally affect
Yeah.
your body composition
Absolutely.
and all sorts of other things.
Huge impact.
Can you give us
Yeah.
some examples? Like, how do those factors actually play into it?
Sure. So as we get older, we naturally tend to lose muscle mass.
Okay.
So an older adult might have a BMI that seems high, alarming maybe,
Yeah.
but for their age, it could actually be perfectly healthy.
Right.
And similarly, women naturally carry more fat than men, and BMI doesn't account for that.
Hmm.
There are also variations between ethnic groups in terms of body fat distribution and health risks.
Right.
And BMI just ignores all of that.
So you could be like totally misdiagnosed,
Yes,
worrying
that's right.
unnecessarily.
Based on BMI alone.
Exactly. So it's really important to consider each person's individual circumstances and not just rely on this one-size-fits-all metric.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then you mentioned a fourth flaw, this healthy illusion. What's that about?
Yeah. So you can actually have a normal BMI
Okay.
and still be really unhealthy.
Right.
Remember, BMI doesn't tell us anything about things like cholesterol levels, blood pressure, blood sugar,
Right.
all those important metabolic markers.
Mm-hmm.
Someone could have a normal BMI but have high cholesterol, be pre-diabetic.
Oh, wow.
Maybe they live a very sedentary lifestyle, all of which increase their risk for chronic diseases.
So you could be thinking you're perfectly healthy
Right.
because that number's in the normal range.
Yeah, good.
But actually be like bringing some
surface?
some serious health problems. That's kind of scary.
It is. It is. And that's exactly why we need to look beyond just this one number and consider a more holistic view of health. Okay, so I think we've pretty thoroughly debunked the myth of BMI as the ultimate health indicator.
Yeah.
So what does the Lancet propose as alternatives? Like, what are these new tools that can give us a more accurate and personalized understanding of our health?
That's what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
There's some exciting stuff.
Awesome. I'm ready.
Well, they highlight several alternatives that really address those shortcomings we talked about with BMI. And they give us, I think, a much more nuanced and comprehensive view of individual health.
Okay, I like it. It's like we're getting new lenses to look at our health with, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So let's unpack these alternatives. What's the first one that we should all be aware of?
One that I think is really interesting is the waist to height ratio,
Okay.
or WHTR. Have you heard of this one?
Yeah, I think so.
So this measurement, it looks at your waist circumference in relation to your height.
Hmm.
And it can give you some really valuable insights into your body fat distribution.
So why is WHTR better than BMI?
Well, for one thing, it specifically focuses on visceral fat.
Right. The bad fat.
The dangerous one, right?
Yeah.
Remember we were talking about that?
Yeah.
And it's been shown to be a much better predictor of things like metabolic and cardiovascular diseases than BMI. Actually, you know what? A recent study found that WHTR was twice as accurate as BMI in predicting heart disease risk.
Wow. Okay. That's a pretty big difference.
Right.
That's a good reason to pay attention.
Yeah, so it's definitely worth knowing about. And the cool thing is, it's pretty easy to calculate.
Okay, good.
You just divide your waist circumference in centimeters
Okay.
by your height in centimeters.
All right, so let's say someone has a waist circumference of, 80 centimeters,
Okay.
and they're 160 centimeters tall.
Right, so their WHTR would be 0.5.
0.5. Okay. And what does that number mean?
So generally speaking, a WHTR below 0.5 is considered low risk. But if it's 0.5 or higher, that indicates an increased risk of health problems, like diabetes, heart disease, that kind of thing.
So even if your BMI is quote unquote normal,
Exactly.
but your WHTR is high,
Right.
that's like a warning sign.
It is.
That you might need to, pay attention to that visceral fat.
Absolutely. It's a much better indicator in many cases. And another advantage of WHTR is that it's applicable across different populations.
Okay.
So it takes into account those variations in fat distribution we were talking about
Right.
based on ethnicity and sex.
Mhm.
So it's a more universal kind of measure.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we've got WHTR, which gives us a better idea of our fat distribution.
Right.
What's the next alternative on the list?
Another important one is body fat percentage,
Okay,
or BFP.
BFP. Yeah.
This one tells you what proportion of your total body weight is made up of fat.
Right.
So instead of just looking at your weight as a whole, it helps you separate the fat from the lean mass.
Right, the muscles and the bones and all that good stuff.
Right, exactly. It gives you a much clearer picture of your actual body composition.
Okay, I like it. How do you usually measure BFP?
There are actually several different ways. Some are really simple, some are more sophisticated. You've got skin fold calipers. Those measure the thickness of your skin fold.
Yeah, I've seen those.
At different sites on your body, that's a pretty common one.
Mm-hmm.
Relatively inexpensive.
Okay.
And then you've got bioelectrical impedance scales.
Oh, yeah, I have one of those.
Yeah, those send a small electrical current through your body.
It's a little weird,
It's a little strange, yeah.
but it seems to work.
Yeah, and they can estimate body fat pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are DEXA scans. Have you heard of those?
Yeah, I've heard of those. Aren't those like the really accurate ones, but maybe harder to come by?
Yes, DEXA scans, or dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, they use low-dose X-rays to measure your body composition.
Oh.
They're considered the gold standard because they're so precise, but they can be more expensive, and they're not available everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
So whether you're like a serious athlete or just someone who wants to keep track of their progress, BFP seems like a pretty important tool to have in your health arsenal.
Absolutely.
But how do you know what a healthy body fat percentage is? Like, are there like guidelines or something?
Yeah, so the ideal body fat percentage, it actually varies depending on things like your sex, your age, and your activity level.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
But in general, for women, a healthy range is considered to be between 21 and 31%.
Okay.
And for men, it's between 14 and 24%.
Okay, that's good to know. So now we've got like a target to aim for instead of just looking at that BMI chart and freaking out.
Exactly. It's about understanding your body composition and what's healthy for you.
Okay, so we've got WHER and we've got BFP, which are, I think, excellent additions to our health toolkit.
Totally.
What other alternatives are there to look into?
There are a couple more. There's waist-to-hip ratio.
Oh, okay. Yeah, WHR, right.
Yes, WHR.
And how is that different from WHTR? I always get those confused.
Yeah, so WHTR compares your waist circumference to your height.
Right.
But WHR compares your waist circumference to your hip circumference.
Okay, so it's really about like how your fat is distributed in your midsection.
Exactly.
Okay.
And a high WHR, particularly above 0.85 for women and 0.9 for men,
Okay.
that's associated with an increased risk of heart disease and diabetes.
Right. So it's another way to see if you might be carrying too much fat in those dangerous places, right?
Absolutely, especially relevant for heart health.
Yeah, okay.
And then there's the fat-free mass index, or FFMI.
FFMI. Okay, I haven't heard of that one.
This one's really interesting. So this takes your muscle mass into account
Okay.
in relation to your height. And it's calculated by dividing your fat-free mass, that's your total body weight, minus your fat mass,
Okay.
by your height squared.
Oh, okay. So this is where, like, if you're a really muscular athlete,
Exactly.
BMI might say you're overweight, but FFMI would be like, no, this is muscle.
Right, it clarifies things. And it's particularly useful for athletes, bodybuilders, people who are really focused on building muscle mass.
Right.
While keeping their body fat in check.
Okay, that's really interesting. I'm starting to see how, like, limited BMI is, really.
Yeah.
It's just not giving us the whole picture.
It's really just one small piece of a much larger puzzle.
Okay, so we've talked about all these different ways to measure like body composition and fat distribution,
Right.
which I think are all super valuable.
Yeah.
But what about like our internal workings?
Ah.
Like how can we assess our metabolic health, which I know is really important for preventing chronic diseases?
Yeah, that's a great point. Metabolic health is often overlooked when we focus solely on weight or BMI. It's like looking at the outside of a car without checking what's going on under the hood.
Oh, okay, that's a good analogy. I like that. So what are like some of the key metabolic markers that can give us a peek into our internal health?
There are several important ones: blood pressure, cholesterol levels, triglycerides, blood sugar levels, and insulin sensitivity.
Okay, I've heard of all those before, but honestly, I don't really know what they all mean.
Okay, yeah, no worries. You can break those down.
Yeah, can you explain them like I'm 5?
Sure. So think of these markers as like vital signs for your metabolic health.
Okay, I like.
So, for example, blood pressure, that measures the force of blood against your artery walls.
Okay.
And if your blood pressure is consistently high over time, that can damage your arteries and increase your risk for heart attacks and strokes.
So it's like a warning sign that maybe something's not quite right with your cardiovascular system.
Exactly. And then there's cholesterol, which is a fatty substance found in your blood.
Hmm.
And high cholesterol can lead to plaque buildup in your arteries, which can also increase your risk for heart disease.
Right, right. Okay, so we've got blood pressure, we've got cholesterol. What about triglycerides? What are those all about?
Triglycerides are actually another type of fat found in your blood,
Okay,
and high levels of triglycerides have been linked to an increased risk of heart disease and pancreatitis.
gotcha.
And then you have blood sugar levels, which are important for everyone, not just people with diabetes.
Right.
So blood sugar levels indicate how well your body regulates glucose. You know, glucose is the primary source of energy for your cells.
Hmm.
But if your blood sugar is consistently high, that can damage your nerves, blood vessels, and even your organs over time.
Oh, wow.
And then finally, you have insulin sensitivity. This reflects how well your body responds to insulin, which is the hormone that helps your cells use glucose for energy.
Okay, so all of these like metabolic markers,
Yeah,
they really give us a window into like what's happening inside our bodies
exactly.
and whether we're at risk for developing, serious health problems down the road.
Absolutely. They give us a much deeper understanding of our health than just looking at our weight or BMI.
It's like having a backstage pass to our inner workings.
Right.
We get to see like what's really going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. And by understanding these markers, we can make better or more informed choices about how to improve our metabolic health.
Okay, so we've explored like a whole bunch of alternative metrics that can paint a more holistic and personalized picture of our health. It's like we've upgraded from like a basic black and white photo
Right.
to like a vibrant high definition image.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It's a great way to put it.
It's pretty amazing. And it's empowering too.
It is, very much so.
Like we're finally getting the tools to take control of our health in a really meaningful way.
Absolutely. And it's never too late to start. No matter where you are in your health journey, you can always take steps to improve your well-being.
I think our listeners are probably eager to hear like what can they actually do?
Yeah.
What are some practical steps they can take to explore these alternative metrics and kind of get a deeper understanding of their own health?
Well, I think the first thing is just to start,
Yeah.
Take that first step, and there are so many resources available to help you
Okay.
explore these different metrics and figure out what works best for you.
It makes it less scary, right?
Right.
Because it feels like a journey.
Exactly. It's not a race.
Yeah. So what are like some actual things people can do to get started?
Well, for example, you can easily measure your waist circumference and your height
Right.
and calculate your WHTR. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Lots of gyms and health centers, they offer body fat percentage assessments.
Mm-hmm.
They use different methods, so that's a good option.
Okay.
And you know what? There are even smart scales and wearable devices now
Oh, yeah.
that can track your body fat percentage and other metrics right at home.
Technology is pretty amazing.
It really is. It's making it so much easier to keep tabs on our health.
Yeah, but I imagine all that data can be a little overwhelming too.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, how do we make sense of it all?
That's a great point. And I think it's important to remember that these tools, they're just that. They're tools.
Yeah.
They provide data, but it's up to us to interpret that data
Right.
and make informed decisions about our health.
So it's not about obsessing over the numbers, right?
So exactly.
It's more about using those numbers
Yeah.
to understand like the trends.
Yes, the patterns.
Yeah.
What's happening in your body over time.
Yeah.
And then making gradual changes.
So it's more like a guide, not a dictator, I guess.
I love that. Yeah. It's about listening to your body
Yeah.
and making choices that support your overall well-being.
This whole conversation is making me rethink my own approach to health, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, I used to be like so focused on my BMI, and now I'm realizing it wasn't really giving me the whole picture.
It's a common experience.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to explore some of these other metrics and see, what they tell me.
I think that's a great idea. And remember, there's no one size fits all.
Right. Right.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Yeah.
It's really about finding what feels right for you and your body.
Okay. So As we wrap up this deep dive, what are like some final takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest one is to remember that BMI is just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah,
It doesn't tell the whole story. Don't let a single number define your health or your self-worth.
that's such a good point.
Mm.
It's so easy to get caught up in those numbers.
Right.
We forget that health is so much more than that.
Exactly. So embrace a more holistic and personalized approach.
Yeah,
Explore these alternative metrics, make gradual changes, and celebrate your progress along the way.
I love it. And remember, everyone, this is a journey, not a destination.
So true.
There will be ups and downs, setbacks, breakthroughs. Just be kind to yourself and keep learning.
Well said. And if you're looking for more information on all sorts of health and fitness topics, I highly recommend zenfitpulse.com.
Yeah?
Their articles are fantastic, well-researched, really insightful, and easy to understand.
Yes, a huge thank you to zenfitpulse.com for inspiring today's deep dive.
Absolutely.
They are an amazing resource.
They're really leading the way towards a more holistic approach to health.
Well, that brings us to the end of another fascinating deep dive.
It was a good one.
We hope you enjoyed this exploration of the world beyond BMI.
Yeah.
We encourage you to keep exploring, find what works best for you and your unique body.
Because health isn't about perfection, it's about progress.
Right? Every step you take towards a healthier you is a win. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic we know you'll love. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay well.